A lot of people, they don't even have that aspect of their lives, like even personally, business-wise, whatever. They don't really even know what they're about. They just maybe stumbled into something or whatever. And now it's like they're at this point of inflection with the internet and kind of what that's going to come to in the future, and they don't know where to go. And it's just the inactivity and the non-adaption is just creating death. You know.
Welcome to Price Plow.
What's going on, Price Plow Nation? All right, we were off camera just now. I'm here with Josh Schall, business consultant for supplement fitness industry. Should I say supplement industry specifically, or like, are you work with other businesses?
I basically, it's nutritional supplements and then functional food and beverage. So I've definitely spread my wings a little bit, but I kind of cut my teeth in nutritional supplements.
Okay, well, business consultant basically like helps businesses grow. We've been in such interesting conversations because though you guys probably think of me as like the YouTuber guy that reviews supplements and stuff, but like I've actually been an entrepreneur since I was 21 years old. I've always had like kind of a little bit of that DNA. And I think entrepreneurs come in different shapes and sizes. You know, I'm like my own interesting version of one, but like I have an interest in the concept of business development and all of that. And so one of the conversations that we got into, I just hit record. I was like, we need to fucking like record this. Whenever I was learning about like building a business and stuff, and I actually went to a hands-on personal training school when I got certified, and one of the segments was like kind of a business development or like building your brand, I guess, you know, was kind of the concept. And I remember like it was a very textbook thing, but they were like, the first step in your business plan was setting core values. And I remember as a young kid thinking like how, even though like, look, we had core values in the Marine Corps, I've always had core values internally. I guess I didn't appreciate what that really meant. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like now coming full circle years and years later, going through like trials and tribulations, building businesses, both positive and negative, I realize, God, how crucial that is. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts, man, just open-ended, like core values, like you're talking to a brand or starting any business, like why the fuck is that so important?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of times when I ask those questions, the entrepreneur is kind of like dumbfounded, like, why are you asking me that question? And what you end up doing, and I think it's maybe just like non-traditional, a lot of these entrepreneurs didn't go to, you know, like myself, went to, you know, business school, got my MBA, all those types of things were like, that was like beat into you. But at its core, or, no pun intended in terms of core values, but like, it's honestly like, it's your reasons of creating that business. Like when you started, you obviously said things like, I want to treat the customer first. I want to do this, whatever. And those things were why you started the business. You might not have wrote them down, but those were the reasons why you started your business. And that hopefully has been the kind of the deciding kind of direction that you've always went based around what I would consider like the North Star. And we were talking about it, how it's, on the flip side, you have the North Star, which is like the internal core values of your, and only employees really get to ever see that. And that's why they want to work for you and they want to, spend more than half of their week with you and all that. And then there's the other side where there's like the core values of the brand or what they would consider like the brand story. And again, a lot of entrepreneurs struggle to be able to tell me that as well. And it again, you have to kind of break it down and say like, well, what was the reason why you started this brand? Like what was the value like why did you think this idea was valuable in the world? Like why did you create it? Like
well, one of the best way to remind yourself or to see that from an individual. And I built a personal training certification school, right? And so we basically had young folks that wanted to become trainers and start a career with that. Now that doesn't mean they necessarily want to be entrepreneurs, but they wanted to be trainers, right? Get certified, like start a business in some capacity or employee or whatever. But what was interesting is like getting into the conversation where I'm having to like explain that you're going to have to market yourself and run a business to a certain extent. And it's weird because it's kind of the opposite parallel of you talking to business owners, because what I'm actually having is I have these fresh off the boat, green, passionate individuals, and the answers that I get are things like why do you want to be a trainer? It's like, I want to help people. I want to and it's these very like raw, I hate to say immature, but it's like asking a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up type of thing. And it's true, pure like core. You know what I mean? It's like what they actually care about. And then like along the way, you become a business owner, and like things happen and whatnot, and it's like I hate to say you lose your way, but like you start to drink the juice a little bit. You're like, why the fuck did I start this in the beginning? Now all I care about is how many shirts I sell or whatever, you know?
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, you create this thing, you put it out to the market, it becomes a living, breathing thing. All of a sudden, the market starts telling you what that is, that brand, that business, your personal brand, whatever. If you're not out there actively, like, communicating that and actually, like, directing your brand to the correct story, you end up risking it being told back to you in a way that's incorrect. So, why, this is kind of talking about this is important is that, like, social media, I think this is a perfect, the best time to be an entrepreneur. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Honestly, if anybody complains about building businesses today, like, they just don't get it. Like, this is the best time ever that you could start a business, because you have the ability to directly communicate your story, your values, your core, like, what got you up out of bed every morning, like,
guys,
what that was.
I know exactly how many of you guys come from what platform, what sex you are, what region of the world you're in. Like I have such a, not only have we helped to develop and talk to a specific crowd of individuals that are interested in a certain thing, but I even have data now connected to that to reinforce like who the audience is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's I feel like finding people within your core values or what you care about, or like marketing to those people and building around that is not like this is the easiest time. It's the best time to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because you kind of lose track of like what happened, because the market kind of took control of your brand, and you kind of, as what CJ said, like, you kind of just got beat down a little bit probably. It's important that you still have a chance to correct that narrative, and you're able to, especially with social media, like, you have a direct connection. Like, you could tell that story however the story was supposed to be told. And in general, like, it's just super powerful. And I understand it's sometimes it feels awkward. I mean, it feels awkward for me. It probably felt awkward for CJ to begin. Like, it's just weird a lot of times to, like, feel like your purpose or your values or whatever are, like, actually interesting. But I think it is. I mean, it's one of these things where it's like it's kind of, in a sense, like, you read like autobiographies or business books about, like, Henry Ford or this or that or whatever. Like, you wrote, like, that's kind of this is the new age version of that at this point. Like, you're able to really document, like, what are the raw thoughts and feelings about what's happening in your business. And if you're not taking advantage of that, and you're, like, kind of like looking at it and saying, like, oh, that's not me, I don't know how to do that, that's for new kids, whatever. Like, don't you understand, like, nobody got out of the womb and realized, like, how to do this. Like, this is something that like has been, that you have to teach yourself, like, driving a car or whatever. It's like one of those things where you have to put the time in and you have to do it. But this is, to me, it just feels like it's the best time to build a business. I mean, to be an entrepreneur, you're kind of like, this is like, to me, like Goldilocks or whatever. Like, this is your perfect situation.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So I don't know how many times we've talked to larger legacy brands, even that relatively large scale companies that have been, let's say, criticized on, like, oh, you're just like that cheap, pre-workout that's mass produced or whatever, and how they have such a, like the truth behind the manufacturing, the process, and some of the passion, the core values in the company, some of the things they actually share internally to employees and stuff, it's just not marketed. And, like, I'm going and seeing, like your thought process as a consumer, like, you're looking at them like, look at this big conglomerate, whatever, and you don't really understand the true narrative of what it stands for, which might not be what you think. And it's not necessarily your fault. The company isn't doing a good enough job opening or, like, raising the curtain to be able to share that with the world, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, talking about kind of legacy brands or old brands, like, the way that they were kind of conditioned and the way that business used to be was that you had a retail partner, you had a distribution partner, you have all these, and that's the only way you're getting your product out there. So you're going to communicate, internally with that B2B person, be it a sales guy to distribution, a sales manager or regional sales director at a GNC or whatever, and then you have to hope that they retell that story in a way that is impactful to their customer. So you never really had to communicate directly with the consumer. So I understand how sometimes it might seem foreign, but it's just a way of like kind of changing the nuance of the communication. Like you need, at least nowadays, like you have such powerful tools to be able to directly influence tons of people about your story and be able to tell your story in your words correctly every single time. Like, and if you're not utilizing that, it just kind of seems like a waste at this point.
Yeah, and I think the market these days is if you're not staying true to your core values, and I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, is that it's going to shine through eventually. Like you're not going to be able to fake it. I think you had said something about like vloggers, and you were saying like you're making a video every single day. Like you're not going to be able to play a character every single day. Like you're not going to be able to like do something that you don't truly stand for earnestly like every day, and eventually it's going to shine through. And I think with the transparency of the way things are now and the expectations of the way people are now, you just can't get away with it. I mean, how many times do we see somebody say something that just is just untrue, that gets called out on it immediately, and especially when they try to double down on it, and it's like, you either got to own it and like understand that this is not the world you used to live in 10 years ago, or accept that like they're not going to keep standing for your brand if that's the route you're going to take.
Yeah, if you look at all like the top 10 kind of brands, be in any kind of consumer products, what you end up seeing is like a lot of these brands were not around 10 years ago, and that was not the case 10 years prior, 20 years prior, where like those were long-standing legacy brands that have been there because they've had such huge scale or whatever. And what you're noticing is like these brands that kind of started around like 2009, 2008 or whatever, and kind of fast past that, they grew up in the social media age, and they realized that people want to be communicated to in a transparent manner. They want to understand all the kind of ins and outs of the business because they do find it interesting. And the brands that or people or whatever that kind of balk to that and want to kind of continuously think that that's not happening anymore, they're just basically telling themselves like, we don't want to be around in the next 5 years because this is a very real thing, and it's one of those things where you need to kind of wrap your head around it, because there are a lot of brands that are new that do it extremely well, and they have this stuff pinpointed to such a level that consumers now will go towards those. They don't care that you haven't been around since 1974. Like, they are being spoken to in a way that they know that's for them, and they will buy it based on that because it's so communicated so freely to them, instead of just trusting since 1979. Like, I don't care. Right. What have you done for me lately? I don't give a shit. Like,
yeah. Yeah, and what's funny is how many times I hear like an older generation or folks that like, and I understand how frustrating that must be. It's like well, used to people had respect for X, Y, and Z or whatever, and I'm not even suggesting that I have empathy that maybe it's not that way, but the same way I've told young personal trainers like getting into this industry, I'm like I understand you maybe you're not a social media person, I get that, but maybe you should consider fucking off. And like, I know that sounds shitty, but I'm like, this isn't the game for you then. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like I wish I could change it so that like your preferences would fit this career, but like it just so happens that it's not that way anymore. And same thing. It's like you could resurrect Kodak, you could bring that company back, that's great, except for like we all have like cell phones with cameras in it, and so like, is that irrelevant? You know what I mean? Like I feel like we're trying to hang on to like old philosophies and principles, and it's not to say that we shouldn't appreciate where we came from, but the fact that things have changed and expectations have changed, and a younger generation is saying like, it doesn't matter if you were the greatest bodybuilder 20 years ago, I want to know what you're talking about today. It's just it's a different world that you have to live in. You got to adapt or understand that you're not going to be relevant anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's such a disruptive thing. I mean, it's definitely one of those inflection points in the world that people are going to look back and say, this is such a big difference. Like, there's going to be a clear line between like the winners and losers that adopted this particular thing. And I know, like, I remember is kind of going in the weeds, but like in high school, I took this kind of class about just, I think it was around like maybe television or radio. It was talking about these different points where like when television came or when radio came or when like people that didn't jump on those quick, like there was a complete like kind of like graveyard of brands or people or whatever like that kind of took a stance against it. And I think we're at that point now where like you're starting to see this like and this is like with retailers, with brands, with whatever, like brands that have been around, retailers that have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, 80, 100 years, they're no longer there anymore. And people are blaming millennials and they're blaming all these things like we're killing these things off. No, like you haven't adapted to what is happening in the world. And unfortunately, like we're not putting up with it anymore. And I don't think the people after us, Generation Z, like they're going to be more worse than us. So it's like, you know, it's like you can't bottle Pandora's box at this point. This is the inflection point that you have to either adapt or you're, you know, whatever.
I'll never forget. I think it was Vaynerchuk that said that like you know, they were talking about like net neutrality rules and whatnot, and he was like you know, look, like the reason I'm not worried about that is because the fact of the matter is if Google decides to send a balloon up in the air and give everybody free internet, you know, like his point being that like the future is coming whether you like it or not, and you can fight it, you could put legislation there, you could bitch, you can moan, whatever, but like the future will be here one way or the other, and it's only a matter of time. You're kind of putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound in a sense. And, you know, eventually that's going to break open. It's like, I don't know how many times I'm so sick of hearing about, like, Amazon is the problem, Amazon. And, like, I'm not saying that it's a perfect world. And I also have empathy for the people that are affected. Don't get me wrong. But the same way that taxi drivers became irrelevant when Uber came along, same reason that Blockbuster decided to stand their ground when they could have bought into Netflix, like, all of these are defining moments, and the future is going to come.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, like
I mean, I think all those examples you used were great. I mean, I think it's just one of those things where you obviously have to make a decision, and hopefully you make the right decision. And the examples you kind of used, I mean, obviously they didn't make the right decision, but it's like to me, I think this is one of those big areas that people need to make a decision.
Well, and I think I'm okay with like I'm not even like blaming, but like I'll tell you right now, like I might make a decision with what I'm doing that's going to be the wrong one, and I find myself completely irrelevant. I'm going to tell you guys right now, like. In no way will you hear me like bitch and moan or be butthurt about it. I'm gonna like stand back up, figure out like why I should have gotten on this ship and not this ship, and then like move on. You know what I mean? Because like I think the problem is the victimization of like you made the wrong choice. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think it just brings the whole back like you like being self-aware. Like, and this is kind of you started with you know, your personal training kind of experience where you are a personal brand. Like you had to create your personal kind of core values. You know, like you're self-aware enough to know what you're about, and you're going to stick to that. So like one of it's probably risk-taking or whatever, where you know that's a part of you, and you're going to go after that. Where a lot of people, they don't even have that aspect of their lives, like even personally, business-wise, whatever. They don't really even know what they're about. They just maybe stumbled into something or whatever. And now it's like they're at this point of inflection with the internet and kind of what that's going to come to in the future, and they don't know where to go, and it's just the inactivity and the non-adaption is just creating death. You know what I mean? It's like you have to move in one direction or another. They're just kind of like, what do I do? Somebody eventually hold my hand and tell me, and it's like there's no hope at this point.
Huh? Yeah, that's really interesting that you put it that way, because I was just realizing like when you come to a crossroads of there's an important decision, how do you make a decision, and it goes down to like, you know, those core values of what you stand for. That's gonna, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna be the right decision or the way the market is gonna be or whatever, but the fact is that if you follow your core value, like, you know, I've always said that like I'm okay with crashing and burning as long as I know that I believe in what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like I believe in what I'm standing for. I think there's a lot of people that are kind of like trying to manipulate through based off of something other than what they actually care about or something that means something to them. And I think that always ends up in failure. You know what I mean? And they're the ones that bitch about it, you know, like, anyway, that's, so.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, cool guys. Well, y'all check out Josh. I've got all his information down below. So Instagram, all that good stuff. As soon as you start a YouTube channel, man, we got to give you a shout out there and like get you some subscribers. And dude, hopefully I can help with that. By the way, like I would like to be able to help you with your channel. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, if you can get me one follower, just start with one. I'll be okay. I could probably build to two.
I could get one. Yeah. You know what? I've always said, like, if you're doing something that means something to you, and at least all you need is just one person that cares. That's it, man. That one person. That's all that matters.
That's what we do. Build a channel off of 2 subscribers.
All right, guys, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back for more content. Thanks again.
Welcome to Price Pile.